Let's talk about how Hakari is going to cook Uraume. You know, I find it very ironic how Hakari is the person that everyone expects to die next out of characters like Yuta, Maki, Yuji. Obviously, Yuji's not gonna die. Well, some people actually believe he will, but you get what I'm trying to say. Especially since he is fighting Uraume and characters like Yuta are fighting Sukuna right now. And we all presume Maki is gonna join in on the fight at some point to help fight Sukuna. And if we're keeping it a buck, Sukuna can pack them up at any given time if he really tries his hardest and fights with 100% intensity. But for some reason, Hakari's life is more in danger. Not only is Hakari fighting someone who's extremely weaker than Sukuna and on his level, Hakari is also the most unkillable character in the series besides Sukuna, the man who was stated to have the best regeneration, surpassing Gojo and Sukuna. Sukuna couldn't even kill Gojo with his shrine since Gojo was using his maximum RCT output in order to keep him alive. Imagine what it would take to kill a jackpot Hakari. The same jackpot Hakari we seen cooking Uraume, by the way. But no, Hakari is gonna die and get unlucky. After 18 years, Hakari's luck has finally run out. I know that's like the whole thing people are going with because it sounds like something Gege would write. But I advise you guys to watch my video to truly see how rigged Hakari's domain is and why Hakari uses skill to grab a hold of luck, because some people just think Hakari's fighting with shit odds and honestly everything he does is just luck. It's not the case. He has almost unkillable mechanics like jackpot, as we all know, and stuff like pseudo spins that allow him to rewind an instant so that he doesn't even take damage like he did with Kashimo. So honestly, I don't know the hype about Hakari dying, especially because everyone associates people probably dying if they're specifically fighting Sukuna, and Hakari is not fighting Sukuna. These four characters right here aren't Kashimo. They aren't Higuruma. In my opinion, they have a clear distinction from those guys and aren't as expendable as them. They are the new generation that Gojo was hoping for. I'm not saying they cannot die, I'm just saying using past deaths to justify why these guys have to die is not really that fair. Don't even bring up Gojo dying, because Gojo losing or dying was something inevitable to happen because he was never really going to be Sukuna. By the way guys, before we move any further in the video, goddamn, thanks for the support on my first 2 JJK videos. Holy shit, you guys supported the fuck out of the Yuta one. Let's see if we can keep the streak going. So if you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want more JJK vids, and by leaving a like on the video. I would very much appreciate it. There is this perception of this battle being a bad matchup for Hakari, but I don't think I necessarily see it that way. I don't know where it stems from, but I'm assuming it's because freezing Hakari could leave him vulnerable to dying by potentially getting his head obliterated, and we know that's how you can counter RCT users, or freezing him to the point where his jackpot just runs out. But I don't understand how this necessarily is a bad matchup for Hakari particularly. Shouldn't Uraume be able to freeze anyone and do the same things to them? What's funny is I actually think Hakari is the best possible person to fight Uraume. If we look at how the fight has been going so far, the shit Hakari's been coming back from is pretty ridiculous. If Uraume manages to freeze you or a body part like she did with Hakari's arm, she can destroy your whole limb by breaking the ice. If you aren't Hakari, having to regenerate an arm would be a problem. Uraume's basic ice spears are piercing holes through Hakari's body. Hakari was also able to regrow his leg after it's been completely frozen, then proceeds to kick Uraume and send her flying. So as we can see, Uraume, who I'm assuming is using a relatively small portion of her true power, is already this lethal. Hakari being able to heal to this degree and using that as a way to break out of the ice when she freezes him puts him in a better position than most people, in my opinion. Also, I think as a community, we gotta collectively stop underrating Uraume. She or he, whatever she is, has the blueprints to be as strong as our heavy hitters. Also, I want to get into some philosophical ideologies, whatever the right word for it is. Hakari not being considered to be a typical sorcerer could be considered another reason why he's suited to fight Uraume. Uraume says sorcerers this day and age have an obsession with remaining human. They so desperately want to hold on to their humanity, constantly holding back from being reckless and destroying what they can easily destroy. It's humans' fear of being alienated which makes them weak. But Hakari doesn't share this fear, which causes Uraume to view him as non-human. His disattachment and disregard for his own life, since his whole fighting style is revolved around him gambling and sacrificing his body without fear, and on top of that being pretty much a reckless fighter, could be the perfect type of fighter to fight Uraume. The guy who isn't afraid to destroy everything around him and fights without a care in the world. Another character trait on why I think Hakari is perfect to fight Uraume and will inevitably defeat her in this battle is simply his mindset, and it will allow him to overcome Uraume. I'm not Gege, he might not even give a fuck about anything I'm saying right here, and I'm probably looking too deep, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Hakari's personality is centered around his emotions and ideology, or as he likes to call it, the concept of fever. Hakari first explains the term fever to Yuji and how it correlates to his life of gambling. His first interaction with Yuji was him trying to scam Yuji into paying 200,000 yen, and as Hakari says, it's all because of the fever. The scammer and scammed all have fever, which is them trying to change their lives. People get carried away with the fever and end up making rash decisions. Without fever, people can't even fall in love. To simplify this, Hakari then goes on to say he adores people's fever, and that he loves the fever, and fever is gambling, and love is control. He intends to control the country's fever someday with the Fight Club. As we can see, Hakari and this concept of fever is something engraved into his character. How this correlates to him fighting Uraume is because the fever also impacts Hakari in battle. In Hakari's confrontation with Yuji, he tells Yuji he has to fight and convey his fever to Hakari to convince him to risk his life for Yuji. Yuji's resilience and willingness to do whatever it takes to acquire Hakari's help moved Hakari's fever, and as it stated, Hakari started to heat up, as Kirara mentioned, and at the end of the chapter, we come to find out Hakari's fever was at its peak. So as we can see, Hakari got heated up in this fight and his fever started to burn. When Hakari gets worked up, it can be correlated to his fever being high, which can result in him fighting with more intensity. This could also tie into why Yuta says Hakari being worked up is stronger than him. In this fight, if Uraume gets Hakari's fever worked up to the extreme, I feel like we could get some poetic moments of Hakari's fever burning so hot, allowing him to overcome the frozen star Uraume and her ice cold powers. Hot versus cold. You guys see what I did there? What also makes me think this is because of how worked up Hakari got the last time we seen him. He looked like an absolute lunatic and was encouraging Uraume to bring on the fight. Seems to me like Hakari seems pretty worked up already. Now, going away from all this, like I said in the YouTube video I posted previously, the heavy hitters including guys like Kusakabe and Gojo have been partaking in training over the 1 month time skip. In Gojo's fight with Sukuna, he even mentions this. And as we saw, Yuji was training with Kusakabe when we first got back from the time skip. And this chapter, we find out that Yuji learned reverse curse technique in that 1 month. So it's safe to say everyone's been training, including Hakari. And we know this for a fact since in the beginning of the fight between Sukuna and Gojo, Hakari was seen with bandages, meaning he took damage prior for some reason, which most likely could be equated to the training. I also said this would mean Yuta has been training as well. But then, thanks to Andy, aka Weeb, aka Dynamic Weeb, you guys might know him as that, he has enlightened me on a theory that they might actually been training with Gojo in that time skip. Think about it. It's heavily implied everyone has trained, and while spectating the fight, Yuta and Hakari both make remarks about them taking a serious punch from Gojo. They are both his star pupils. They are both the characters that Gojo has mentioned early on in the series have potential to surpass him. So it can make sense if he had focused training with them specifically. Why I also think them taking a punch from Gojo could be referring to them training at the time skip is because this could also explain Hakari's bandages. Like, who else is that strong to seriously damage Hakari to where he needs to get patched up? Like, come on, we know who Hakari is. Like, him really out of everybody? And it would also explain why these two characters are implied to be extremely relative to Gojo, to the point where Gojo thinks they can both be used as a way to gauge if it's time for them to jump in on Sukuna. Because as Hakari said, Gojo advised them to only jump in when Sukuna is weaker than Yuta or Hakari. Maybe he could have said this statement right here because he actively participated and prepared them for this possible scenario of them needing to jump in to fight Sukuna. This wouldn't be ridiculous because we've seen the cast making several plans for many outcomes. Gojo with his 6 eyes is capable of gauging someone's power levels just by looking at them. So come on guys, tell me if it sounds too ridiculous now. By the way, while we're talking about this statement, a lot of you will probably think Yuta would cook Uraume. But Hakari's gonna die? Really? Where's the fairness in that? The man who Gojo thinks is pretty much damn near equal to Yuta is gonna die, but Yuta is comfortably above Uraume. What's going on? Like, I'm not seeing what's going on. As for what Hakari has learned, the time skip is damn near anyone's guess. I'm also certain that we're gonna see a new layer to his domain we didn't know, or something new. Like Hakari potentially rolling 777s, which is known as the luckiest roll in casino games, is something I could see happening, and him getting the same power we didn't know of. I hope we see Hakari get domain amplification, because that would be a big power up in this fight, and Hakari would actually be a perfect person to use it. We know domain amplification neutralizes the opponent's curse technique at the cost of not being able to use your own. Hakari doesn't even use his own curse technique after hitting jackpot, so there wouldn't really be a downside for him. Domain amplification coating his fist with Hakari in jackpot with infinite cursed energy is devastating. He might even be able to counter Uraume's ridiculous curse technique to some degree. And depending on Uraume's domain expansion, he can use this as a way to counter her sure hit effect, especially because Hakari in jackpot doesn't fight in his domain. So that would definitely give Uraume an opportunity to use domain expansion on Hakari. Even though it wasn't confirmed that domain amplification can negate a sure hit of a domain, it is kind of implied that it can, with the fact of Gojo pretty much comparing it to be very similar to a simple domain, and the whole concept of domain amplification is to negate curse techniques. So if you surround your whole body with it, it would kind of make sense that that's what it does, even to a sure hit effect. And in Sukuna's fight against Gojo, he kind of implied that's what he was using as well, but that's a whole different topic. So I see some people speculating they want to see Hakari use black flashes. I don't know if that's something Hakari would need in this fight, only because it's implied that black flashes replenish curse energy to some degree, like we've seen in Gojo's fight. And I feel like since Hakari has infinite curse energy in jackpot, that's not something he can fully benefit from, if you know what I'm trying to say. But I can rant all day about Hakari and what I hope he will get and how this will play out, but let me know what you guys think. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.